We are going to be painting a fluffy cat in charcoal. So the first thing that I did, I drew this guy out, and you can just trace it from your computer. Like, you can keep it super simple. If you don't want to freehand the subject yourself, you can do this for anything. I just traced, you can kind of see it on there, I taped the paper to the computer screen, saved some time, traced that, and I'm gonna use transfer paper, or I've already used transfer paper to transfer the image. All you do is take some transfer paper, you stick that under, you get a stylus or an old pen, and you trace over what you've already drawn. Now, I recommend doing this even if you want to freehand. You can still freehand, but freehand on another piece of paper so that you can do all your erasing and your smudging, get that done there, and then trace it and use transfer paper. Now I've got a perfectly clean transfer onto my actual project paper. There's no eraser marks all over. I didn't burn through from erasing too hard because I kept changing stuff, nothing like that. All of those changes would be done on that separate scratch piece of paper that you did your initial drawing on. So it's a much easier way, much safer way to get your work cleanly transferred over. And I'm gonna go ahead and take this off now. And I recommend, whenever you do this method, save the tracing paper portion, because if you later on are drawing and you realize either you missed something, or let's say you've been drawing and your eyes just don't look right, you can hold this back over it and see, did you accidentally make your eye come out a little too far to the left, a little too far to the right? You can use this to basically check your work. The pencils that I'm gonna be using tonight are General's Charcoal, and I've got my extra soft. I'll definitely be using you. And I need my white charcoal. So these are going to be my main go-tos here. All of the supplies that I'm using tonight are listed in the video description. So this guy, I'm going to start with his eye. I'm going to start with the hard lead because I don't want this to smudge too much. Now the hard, it's not that it's not dark, it's that it's, I can probably zoom this in some, it's not going to smudge as much as a soft. The softer lead is going to smudge out better. Just mapping out about where everything is going to go. Yeah, see, over the transfer paper, it doesn't stick super well. And this is a 5x7, so I'm not going to get all the detail in here, but I can still get a decent amount. We've got some interesting detail in the eye. I don't need it exact, I'm just going to go for close. Let's get that white in there so I don't accidentally go over that before I mean to. It's much easier to make things darker than to lighten them up, so we'll start with that. And then he's got a little eyelid, so we're going to lift this up a bit higher. And these are the things that you want to watch in your reference photo. This reference photo can be found over at my website. I got this one from Unsplash. And if you look at that photo, we've got dark, and then it gets light, and then dark again, and that's what we really want to capture there. We're going to pull this up. And then anywhere where I want it to really smudge a bit better, I'm going to switch over to my soft charcoal. Now I've got a lot of these different ones, the hardness level. So this one is extra soft, I've got medium, and I've got hard. I don't know if there's an extra hard or not, but those, you can simplify it and just go with the softest and the hardest, and that's really enough to get started. Once you get comfortable, you can go ahead and start using those mid-range, but if in the beginning you're thinking, I don't know which one to choose, just go with these two. You can do, really with just the softer ones, you can do everything you need. So I'm using the soft, going to darken this up a bit more. And the eye is really where the majority of the detail is going to be. I'm not going to spend this much time on everything else. Let's see, we've got a little bit darker as it fans out here around the pupil. So I'm making these little straight lines. And then let's take the white and get some little detail. Don't go crazy with the white. I'm going to let that gray paper, and this is Canson MeTense paper, I'm going to let most of that show through. That's really all that eye needs. You don't need to go super crazy on that. Maybe smudge a little bit more. And let's see, this guy. This eye is much darker. It is also slightly out of focus. So I'm not going to try to pull in nearly as much detail as the other one. Not nearly as much with the white either, just very soft. Okay, And while I'm over here, let's just go ahead and get this cheek. We've got this definite white area. And this is more solid because this, again, is not as in focus as this side. This side will get more of the harsh fur lines. Now I'm going to take a shading tool and just smudge this into the paper. I want to soften that out. Let the gray of the paper work for me here. And when you get these charcoal pencils, if you're just ordering them, get a bunch of them. I always get several, especially the white charcoal. I use it for my, when I'm working with acrylic paints, I use it for so many different things. I'll move up to this ear. So right now I'm not focused so much on detail as I am my values. Where are my lights and where are my darks? Especially this side where everything is not super in focus. So now I'm going to take my shading tool again and let's just soften this out. And the cool thing with charcoal, you can go like hyper realistic, you can go photorealistic, or you can go more sketchy. I mean, you've got any way you possibly want to work, charcoal can do that for you. It's such a fun medium and fast. I'm going to take a little bit of black here and smudge that up into the fur. And I used the soft pencil there so that it would smudge more. Remember, if you want it to smudge more, use your soft charcoal. And you'll get to where, like right now, I've got a decent amount of black on there. I can take that and darken up that cheek a little bit. Okay, we've got the little whiskers coming up. And eyebrows, I guess. Eyelashes? No, those aren't eyelashes. I know anatomy, really. Got some tufts of hair coming up here on this guy. And then white, just right into the head. So back, let's go. I'm going to skip now over to this ear and then work my way down. So I will usually do one of two things. I'll start with the eye and work out, or I'll start at the ears and work down. I'm kind of doing both right now. Just the point is, pick one spot. Don't worry too much. Like, I don't want to work down at the bottom and then up here and just jumping all over the place. One of the mistakes I used to make, and I was actually talking about this in the Patreon video that you guys will be getting this week. One of the mistakes I used to make when I first started with art is I was just jumping all over the place. I'm like, okay, I mixed the perfect color of green. Let's just put green everywhere that's going to go. That's not going to work well for you. If you're trying to do something that's super realistic, your better way to go is to break it up into one little area. Only focused on this here, then only focused here, only focused there. Focus on one little area and then work your way out slowly. You will get much, much better results. One of the reasons that I was always hesitant, actually, I need to get some glassine. One of the reasons that I was hesitant before is to do that is I always felt I was never, even colored pencil, acrylic painting, I was always afraid I was not going to be able to get my color mixed the same. I would never mix that color again, or you would be able to tell where I start, like the start and stop, I wouldn't get it blended smoothly. None of that's an issue. Like, it's not a problem at all. So yeah, definitely break it up into small sections. So I'm going to put a bit of glassine here, and this is going to keep me from getting charcoal all over my hands, but it also keeps the oils from my skin off the artwork. And I just want to watch which direction that fur goes in. Now, if you are struggling to create realistic fur, no matter what type of animals, feathers, hair on people, whatever it is, charcoal is such a good way to do studies where you're just pick a little patch of fur and just do a study, drawing that fur, trying to get it super accurate to your reference photo. But charcoal is such a fast medium, you're going to learn a lot faster on capturing that movement and the shape and the shadows and how all of that comes together. Get some little fluff here, and then he's got fluff on the tip of his ear. The actual photo, this is an orange tabby. Now, whenever you've got a photograph that's in color, but you want to draw it in black and white and graphite, charcoal, or you're just painting in black and white, make sure it is going to be much easier on you. Make that photo black and white so you can see your values better. And what I will typically do is after I make it black and white, I adjust my values. I make changes in Lightroom or Photoshop or whatever photo editor you're using, because it gives you a better idea of, will it look better if I make my darks darker, my lights lighter? Adjust that, because something that looks good in color doesn't always look great. The photograph isn't, like, the way you photograph for color is not the same as you photograph for black and white. So we have to make those adjustments in a photo editor. And that will make your job as an artist when you start drawing much, much easier. Now, good news, the white charcoal, you can't even see where my lines were from the transfer paper. Sometimes you can. So it's super bright right around that ear. Okay, now these little hairs go on top of what's back here. So this area that I need to be darker, there's one little light area, I need to do that first. Otherwise, I'm going to be trying to work between hairs. I'm just making my life a lot harder than it needs to be. So I am going to take my soft and I'm just lightly, very lightly going to go over this because I don't need it super dark. Just a little bit, and I'm going to smudge that in. If you're working on colored paper like this, let the color of the paper work for you. I'm not trying to cover it all. I think it's great if some of this gray shows through. That's why I chose gray. But it can look good too if you're using, because Inktense makes a lot of different colored papers. If you're using like their blue and you let the blue show through, that'll look great too. So let's go ahead and shade this a bit more. I just want to get some variation so it's not one solid color. Some of this can be even a little lighter. So let's get some of the light in here. Now, one of the things a lot of artists, when they're doing pet portraits, will skip over is the detailing in the ears. Don't do that. That will really bring down the entire piece. When you put so much detail everywhere else in the ears, you're like, oh, it's just the inside of an ear. It's solid. It's not. Really look at the details in there. It'll make a huge difference to your end result. I'm just going to smudge that down. And I know some of you guys are like me. I've read some of the comments where you guys were worried about the dryness, like with with regular pastel pencils. I can't do it. The dryness, the chalky feel freaks me out. I've got issues. Charcoal does not do that to me. So like, even when it gets on my hands are super dirty, it doesn't cause any issues. It doesn't, like, the weird dry feel, I don't find really with the charcoal that I did with the I keep saying pan pastels. Pan pastels don't do that, with the pastels. So if you're hesitant to try charcoal because of that, give it a try, because at least for me, I've not had any issues, and I'm pretty weird. I'm just looking at that photo. Now I can start getting some of these individual hairs in there. Make sure that you don't just do a bunch of perfectly straight lines. Straight lines have a very unnatural feel. It'll make the fur look wiry. Look how it curves. And don't cover all the gray completely. I want some of that gray of the paper to show. It's saving me time so I don't have to come back through and add darks everywhere. Though I do need some darks in here, just a little. And then we'll smudge that out. Whoops. What I typically do with the shading tool, I keep one side for the black charcoal and then the other side for the white, so that I don't mix them too much. But if it starts to get muddy, because they will start mixing it quite a bit, if they start to get muddy, I just wipe it off on a paper towel. Quick tip, do I have one over here? I may not. Yes, I do. These here are not for sharpening these. These two things have nothing to do with each other. These are for sharpening these. It's for your pencils. It's great for colored pencils, the main thing that I'll sharpen with them. You can use them for charcoal, but past the colored pencils, I get the best results out of when you want that really sharp tip. These, you don't sharpen. If they start to get dull, get a new one. You rub this on here and it gets fluffy and rough, and maybe there's some textures that would kind of be okay with that, but you lose a lot of control. You basically ruin your shading tools if you try to sharpen them. I will have some, I've got one somewhere that I've been using, well, at least since I was teaching in California back in 2005. and I'm still using. So we're almost, gosh, 15 years. I'm old. Yeah, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it other than it got shut in a car door, so it has a little handle somewhere. Actually, it's probably over here somewhere. If I pull it out later, I'll show you. It's straightened out a little over the years, but I kept it. It still works fine. I use it mostly for graphite, but oh, wait, is this it? Yeah, this is it. This one got shut in the car door. This one, at least since 2005, and I just use it for my thumb. But the point is, it's still got, the points are fine. You don't need to sharpen these. You will ruin them. Oops. Speaking of sharpening things, let's soften that out. That's a bit too sharp. And when you see me flipping this over, it's just because I keep putting the dark side versus the light side. So just adjusting there. And the majority of my time is typically spent around the ears and the eyes when I do pet portraits. And the nose. The nose will take a little bit. Well, not this one, but in like dogs, that will typically take a bit longer. Now this area here, way too dark, not a problem because I can come back over with the white pencil. There we go. Few little white marks on the tuft there. Little bit in here, not too much. I'm going to soften that out. Now the more lines I put here, the more dense this fur is going to start looking. And then I'm going to also soften that out just a bit. I want to leave some of that gray showing through. Okay, I'm going to scooch over. We're going to go down to his eye and start working our way out. Okay. And let's start with, we've got a lot of white around here. Again, watch the direction that the fur is moving in. It's very easy to make a couple of pencil strokes and think it looks great and then quickly realize that it all looks the same. One second, I'm just making sure. I'm caught up on that. Okay. So here, see how it switches directions and starts curving out? You don't, and this is a mistake that a lot of artists make. They think that more detail is going to make it look more realistic. No, your values. Are your lights right? Your lights and your darks where the way they should be? And are, in this case, is your fur going the right direction? Those are the things that are going to make a way bigger difference. Your detail, it can look super realistic even with loose detail if you've got your values correct, and in this case, the fur is going in the right direction. One of the things that tends to make people, when they do pet portraits or animals at all, that will start to make it look flat is when they do one stroke for the fur and think it looks great and just keep repeating it again and again and again. And that is how you end up with something that is very, very flat, very unnatural looking. Using the hard lead here. And again, I don't care. I actually prefer, usually I will hype up my contrast a bit, make my darks a little darker, my lights a little lighter. Actually, I've got too many pencils in my hand. Let me put the soft one down so I don't mix those up. Okay. And we've got this very white area. It's pretty solid here. I thought I was going to need white or water around the eye to clean up the edges, but they're sharp enough. So we will not add that. But with your charcoal, you can add water and just get super harsh, like super clear lines if you need to. I avoid it when possible on Inktense and MeWe because this stuff is like a sponge. So it takes a little bit longer to dry. I've got to come back through because I smudged that a bit too much with the eye right along the bottom there. For those of you watching, let me know how many of you guys have cats. What are their names? We've got a little bit of a light area here. It's up a little bit more. I need to pull the dark up too. My dark is not down or up high enough. Round that up. Again, just opening that up a bit more. I'm going to pull that one down, and then I can pull the white down a little bit further in here. Okay, and I'm going to start working up towards the forehead now. I'm going to use the soft one because this is going to blend out a lot, but I still want to pay attention. What direction is that fur moving, even though it's very soft? Lightly go over that. You don't want to overblend with the charcoal. You can blend to the point where you lose your definite lights and darks, where everything just starts mixing together. So you can see it doesn't take a whole lot to blend that out, especially in this case because I'm using soft or extra soft. Oops, back to the soft. I'll just add a little bit, smudge it out some. I don't want to smudge so much that I lose it. And this guy will come in a black mat, so it's a 5x7. The black mat will be an 8x10, so your overall like frame size you would want to put this in would be an 8x10. One of the things that I like to do with something like this, I like to do custom or standard sizes as much as possible because they don't require a custom mat or a custom frame. It makes it much easier for the buyer when you can go with a standard size. Another tip, if you are a pet portrait artist, notice how much room I took on this, and the mat, let me show you. This is not the same mat. This is a white mat. This will come in a black mat, but this is the size of the mat. That cat's face fills up the entire thing. That is a huge thing. Like, yeah, I'm going to call it a mistake. It's a mistake because it just looks terrible. Don't draw this tiny little head in the middle of the paper. Fill that thing out. Know what size your mat's going to be so you can fill that out, but fill it out. Take up that space. It will look so much better than if you're keeping it all super tiny, just kind of a little head floating in there. Go off the page. Don't try to, and I don't like the floating head look either. I used to do this. All of mine were floating heads. And when I started making it so it filled up the entire canvas or the entire paper, it looked so much better. Use up that space. You do not want your prime real estate to be blank background. So even though I'm going to blend that, I still have it going in the right direction. So when I softly go over that, we can still see where that fluff moves. You also really want to watch where is the fur long versus short. That's going to make a big difference in that end result. So like right here, it's pretty short, little tufts. And as we move out towards the neck, it really gets fluffy and long. Looks like a lot of you guys are cat people. Let me know if you want me to do more cats. We can get some kittens. We can do some cats of different ages, different fur type. I can certainly do more. They're fun to draw. So now I'm going to start moving my way out here. Actually, let's take you. So you curve this way, and we're going to come right on down. Right now I'm just mapping out about where these little light areas are. I'm not worrying about the values so much there. I'm just kind of figuring out where things are going to go. Now the fur here, look how it curves. We're starting to swerve down. Now over the bridge of the nose, most of this fur will be very, very soft. We don't need to try to, you don't want it to be like this. I see people do that a lot, like too much detail. You don't need that much, just a little bit of that hint, but most of it just solid because it's so short. Soften that up. I'm going to switch over, whoops, I'm going to throw the pencil on the floor is what I'm going to do. Switch over to the hard so I've got more control here. Remember, the hard lead is not going to smudge out as much, which is why I chose that here. Okay, one part of his little cheek. And this is pretty solid. We're not trying to put in the individual fur there because that is more out of focus. Now this one, we want to watch the direction of the fur. Actually, before I do too much there, I want to get a bit of a shadow. I'm going to take the soft pencil, and I want to create the shadow right under that lip. And I'm going to pull that all the way around. A little bit here. And down just a bit so that the white has something to show up over. Now I'll smudge that out. Now this is going to look way too dark, but I need something so that the white will show up over it. I could do the same thing right now while I'm at it. Take that soft pencil again. Where the whiskers are going to come out from. Let's see, there's 1, 2, 3.5. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.5. Okay, there's the half. Just counting where things go. Again, just pulling that down. Now we'll pull this. These are going to get softened. And right now they'll be too dark, that's fine. We've got the shadow lightly comes up and around. And then we've got the shadow in the face in through here. I'm going to go ahead and darken some of this up now. Just keep looking at that reference photo. You can see my head moving back and forth. I am looking at that photo more than I am my actual artwork. I'm going to soften that out. Again, it's fine that this is too dark right now. And I cannot tell you tonight so how many times I've used hard instead of the soft one. It's not that big of a deal, honestly. If it's not blending for you, switch pencils. But it's not like, oh my gosh, I used the wrong one, I ruined it. No big deal. There's nothing stressful about this. Nothing you can't fix. It is a very, very forgiving medium. Okay, now watch how the direction these go. Actually, I'm going to sharpen this pencil. Which sharpener is this? This has been my favorite lately. M&R, made in Germany. I don't know what it is, but it's got the 3. This has been, like, the blades on this thing have stayed so sharp for so long. I don't know why, but it's amazing. Get those little lines in there. And then these ones, see how these curve out? I am not pushing very hard. If I push very hard with this, that lead is just going to break anyway because charcoal is very soft. Just tiny, tiny little hairs in here. Make sure they overlap. That is a huge deal. If they are not overlapping, they won't look right. And if I were doing a pet portrait, I am certainly going to take more time and make sure I capture everything about that cat, the expression, everything. On something like this, where I'm just drawing any cute cat, like it doesn't, I don't know who the owner is of this one, so they're not going to notice the difference. I'm not going to worry that much if my expression is slightly off. But if you're a pet portrait artist, those are things that you do want to watch. Like, is the eye open a little, like my eye could be open a little bit more if I wanted to really go by this reference photo. Things like that. Here we've got it more solid. I'll do more overlapping. Now you can really see why we had to get that dark first so that I can layer this over the dark. You can keep looking at the direction of the fur. When does it switch? Because it constantly switches directions. You can see how quickly we can go through this. It's what makes it such a great practice when you are learning fur. This is one of the best, really for just anything. If let's say you're drawing roses and you're struggling with that, it is the best medium for quickly doing these studies. Plus it looks awesome. Now I will say it looks a little bit more harsh for some reason on the video. This is a little bit softer. I am blending mine out softer than what it looks like for you guys. That is not something you often hear me say, that it looks too sharp on video. And these same techniques, a raccoon, like anything with fur, it's going to be just like this. If you struggle with drawing tiger fur, practice with charcoal, do a study like this. There we go. Soften that out a bit. I'm using the hard lead just to lightly go over it so that it softens. Then we've got the little eyelash guy here. Comes from this area. Now don't get too excited to do your whiskers and that sort of thing early on, because you want that, you need the background part first. You'll make your job much harder, even though it will look so much better once you get the whiskers in. Everyone gets excited to do the whiskers. But if you do that too soon, you're making your life more difficult. So this is all getting cut off by the mat, but I want to make sure I go a little bit wider than where the mat is going to be, so that as I reposition that, I'm not having to go back in and fill in an area that didn't quite get covered with the mat, if that makes sense. A little bit of a highlight there. Okay, let's go back down here to the chin. Oh, same thing. We've got a shadow that I've got to get in first. So let's grab the extra soft. We've got a definite shadow right here. And this is really soft fur, so we're just going to smudge that on out. But I do want to smudge it the direction of the fur. I wonder how many times I've said that in this video, the direction of the fur. It's very serious, very important. If you are enjoying these lessons and you would like to watch some of my more advanced lessons, you can check that out over on Patreon, or I've got tons of these lessons here on YouTube, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of those. See how that fur changes direction? But see now where that dark is. That's why we had to do the dark first, so that this will pull in. And that's the main thing, is just paying attention. Well, not the main thing, obviously, the direction of the fur, because that is the word of the day, words of the day. But how do you layer it? Where do you put the dark down versus the light down? In most cases, you're going to put your dark down first and then get that light on top. Now, right now, his fur is looking really wiry. It's a little too sharp, so I will definitely spend some time softening that out with the blending tool. Let's grab that. And just soften that up. So if you leave it too wiry or too stringy, too defined, it won't look as soft. If you want to soften it, just go back over, just slightly blend that out. So we've got this whole area in here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get some of the darks in first. Where's my soft? And this does not need to be exact. Close is fine. Actually, let's move this out of the way because I need to be able to line up where the dark areas are going to go. So we've got some in here. Now his fur is a little bit like he could have used a brush. He's got a little bit of matting going on. I'm not going to include that. But I will separate some of these chunks. The more of the chunks I separate it, the more he looks like he's going to need to be brushed. So I'm going to go somewhere in between what the reference photo has and that he was recently groomed. And when you do, if you're a pet portrait artist, that's something that you want to check with your clients. When they provide a reference photo, sometimes the animal has not been recently groomed, but they will want it to look like they were. So that is always something that you want to check with them. So I'm just kind of mapping these out. Most of this gets cut off by the map, but again, we're still going to take it out a little bit further. Yeah, his fur is really stringy in here. I want him to look much softer. Okay, and I'm going to soften that up. And if you are looking for a medium to practice with, because this is something that I hear a lot from people, they're worried about wasting their materials, which is a whole other subject. I don't think you can, personally, I don't think you can waste, well, there's not much you can do to waste art materials besides not using them. But this is said, it's one of the most inexpensive mediums. So you can do a ton of studies. You can get a big pack, like the Canson Me10s works great. And you can get a pad of this. I don't actually know the price off the top of my head, but you can get a fair amount. You can get it both in an actual pad, like your normal sketch pad type paper, or you can get it in individual sheets, which I think is cheaper. Like you can get just a ton of gray or a ton of whatever color you want. Just softening that out. Now we can go on with the white. Oh, he's looking so cute. I'll show you in the other camera in a moment because this is picking up the white really kind of weird. He's much softer looking. Okay, so we've got, I'm just gonna start out here. Let's see, this clump of fur comes right out. It's really soft, slightly out of focus. I'm just gonna hold that pencil to the side. Let that fade out because that's gonna get chopped off by the mat anyway. Okay, as we start getting in focus, I'll switch the way I'm holding that. Let's go ahead and, for this out of focus portion, the really soft, blend that out first. That needs to be a lot lighter, so I'm gonna go back over that. And I want this to be softer than this, so this will be a little bit more defined, and that helps push this portion back. Because the colors are very similar, but being that the texture is different, that is going to really help. Now we can start pulling the individual clumps. Of course, come back through here. Pull that down a bit more. Give him this poofy little chin. Few areas that need to be way brighter. So just work right back over those. And when this is done, I'm going to put a layer, I will lightly mist it with Spectrafix, and that will be what I seal it with. See, right now I pulled this down too far, completely changed his face. I want to push that back up a little bit. It's a bit too much. See what I mean? Very forgiving, and this is why I think it's such a great medium to practice things with. Inexpensive, forgiving, you can go through it quickly. You will just improve so fast if you do these little studies with charcoal. I'm turning into a charcoal salesperson. I should buy stocks in it. I mean, I've never bought stocks before, but if I was going to, that seems like the way to go. And we'll start getting some of these smaller clumps because this area in here is aimed at the viewer more. It's curved out. Well, the fur is shorter, but it's also aimed at the viewer. So they will be much smaller and will get longer as they flatten out and as the fur gets longer. So you've got two things causing that here. But see, I'm letting the dark peek through. And don't just, like right now I have almost all little triangles. Don't just do triangles. That's starting to look too much. Start overlapping. But you will have the fur where it is kind of in a triangle shape because you've got a base and they clump together at the tips. Just don't make them all triangles. Again, all of this is off. You're not going to see any of that once it's matted. And I'll show you what the mats look like. The red-eye tree frog that I did last week, I will show that later so you can see how the mats look on these. They're really nice. I get them from Amazon from a seller called Golden State Art. And you can get them in bulk for fairly cheap compared to what you would buy them for individually at an art store. So if you have a lot of work to mat, those are helpful. I'll put a link in the video description. You can see these clumps. Here again, we're back to a lot shorter. Watch the direction on that reference photo. This is what you don't want to do. See how I've just got little lines individually? That won't look good. They've got to clump and cluster together and overlap. Here, let's see, we've got this whole section in the ear. This is going up. super short little hairs. So again, make sure they're overlapping. Watch how they clump. One of the things that you can do if you're having a hard time really getting the movement of the fur, trace it. Take a pen or like the stylus that I used with the tracing and transfer paper and just go over your reference photo to get a feel for how that fur moves. You can use that to sort of train your hand in that movement. You will notice so much more by doing that than eyeballing it. Like if it just keeps not coming out right, try doing that. That'll really help. Okay, let's soften some of this up. I don't want to overblend it because I do want to be able to see that definition between the light and the dark. So see just a little bit to give him nice soft fur. And that looks so much softer in person. I'll show you in a moment here. That is really coming out a very harsh, odd look there. He's very soft. Yeah, that's a much better. You can see how much softer that looks. The other camera is showing a really harsh look to him, but he's got very, very soft fur just from blending out a little bit more. Again, that is really an odd look there on the camera. Is just a little too harsh here. Definitely looking better in person. So there we go. There is the finished guy. And one of my next tip, if you're going to mat that, make sure, hold the mat there. Oh, we're missing Whiskers. He's not done, but I'll, like usual, sign him before. I'm gonna hold the mat where I want my signature to go, because if I would have signed down at the bottom, which would have felt more natural to me at the time, that would have gotten completely cut off. There we go. Now he needs whiskers. I don't know how I missed that. Like my favorite part, and I just was not going to include them apparently. Okay, so we've got those ones, and then let's see. So we've got one that starts about here, and it's going to come up here. A little bit more detail, just because I can. Yeah, this was definitely a really fun project. I want to soften that out a bit. Okay, now he's done.
Hey, you! Yes, you! I see all your unused art supplies over there. Oh my god, those brushes aren't even opened yet! Tragic. You keep buying new fancy materials, but you don't use them because you don't want to waste them. Stop making your art supplies sad. Sign up for art lessons for as little as $4 a month. There are over 300 painting and drawing lessons available when you sign up, and new ones every week. Patreon.com/Lachri.